I believe it's fairly obvious that we're in that time of year where all these big budget AAA games come out within the span of 2 months. While as a whole, these 2 months are considerably less crowded than previous years of game history, it's incredible to think of what has happened in the span of 3 weeks. On October 21st, Battlefield 1 came out. Literally 7 days later, we get Respawn Entertainment's newest first-person shooter, and exactly 7 days after that, we get Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, sandwiched in between two of the biggest shooters of the year, which is absolutely the worst time for this game to come out. I'm here to declare Titanfall 2 as a hidden gem. It may not be getting nearly as much recognition as Battlefield or COD, regardless, it demands your attention, because Titanfall 2 is one of the best feeling first-person shooters I've played in a long time. Now before I go into the specifics about the game's single-player and multiplayer modes, firstly, I'm going to be talking about Titanfall 2's gameplay and overall feel, as the gameplay both the single-player and multiplayer feels more or less the same. The game almost feels like two different shooters into one, as you both play as a Titan, which are these big mechs that roam the battlefield, and the pilot that controls the Titan known as a, pilot. As a pilot, the most important thing you need to understand is that momentum and free running are the keys to victory. You can wall run, slide, double jump, and climb on the environment. And in the multiplayer, you can even use a grappling hook to get you into harder to reach places much faster. However, it did take me a long while to get used to that. While the last few Call of Duty games, including Infinite Warfare, have adopted the original Titanfall's movement system by also adding double jumps and wall running, Titanfall 2 is without a doubt one of the best feeling first-person shooters out there. Chaining a bunch of wall runs with double jumps is smoother than butter, and luckily, both the campaign and the multiplayer consistently demands you to move around in creative ways. It's also very satisfying to eliminate enemies while wall running. The movement is so addictive that not only did I want to bounce around every single chance I got, but I was a little disappointed while playing any other FPS game simply because the actual act of playing this game was so addictive. And then there are the Titans, which play and feel completely different, but in the best way possible. They feel stiff and heavy, but incredibly vicious. You have a primary weapon, which ranges from a machine gun, grenade launcher, rocket launcher, and even a sniper. You also have an offensive and defensive ability, as well as an ultimate similar to how heroes work in Overwatch. There are different types of Titans you could choose from that have different playstyles, and they are all distinguishable from each other. However, while I would consider the multiplayer to be fairly balanced, I do think that the balancing between the different Titans do feel broken. Classes like the Scorch and Ronin feel weak and useless, while the Tone feels a tad overpowered. Regardless, playing as a Titan gave me this wonderful feeling of power, as I can instantly destroy roaming pilots within the blink of an eye. Zipping around as a pilot and seeing a Titan close to you will instill fear. But then there are the Titan against Titan encounters you'll come across, and this almost feels like a different type of game. While pilot combat feels like a typical fast-paced FPS, Titan combat almost reminds me of a typical fighting game, in which you don't have much room to fight in, and you'll have to accordingly react to your opponent's moves and abilities. In the end, from the addictive, fast-moving and shooting as a pilot, to the stiff, thought-provoking and powerful Titan battles, Titanfall 2's combat is some of the smoothest, most polished FPS gameplay I've experienced this generation. In the campaign, you play as the world's most generic white military soldier, Jack Cooper, who for the longest time I thought was being played by Troy Baker, but it turns out it was Matthew Mercer, and let's be honest, it's easy to get their voices mixed up. You're a regular soldier who's friends with this veteran with a Titan, and then he dies immediately in the most cinematic, stupidly glorified way possible. The Titan, known as BT, is now your friend and is now your weapon to control. So you two team up and then you go to save the world or something? Look, Titanfall 2's story is pretty much as simple as a story can get. It's not all that interesting, yet it doesn't shove any exposition down your throat, and the plot is self-aware of being a generic FPS story without being a parody. The writing is very bad most of the time, the voice acting is okay, and I was disappointed that the intriguing world of Titanfall that was begging to be explored in the first game was barely showed off in the sequel. And while we're on the negatives, as beautiful as this game is, there were a lot of pop-ins, unimpressive facial animation, and some crazy performance glitches. Having said all of that, the story sets up a 6-hour campaign that is a ton of fun. It's a wonderfully paced campaign that balances the pilot and Titan gameplay very well, and I've eventually loved BT and Jack's chemistry and dialogue together, even if most of what BT says is just him not understanding human sarcasm. The fast-paced combat feels incredible as always, and I've had little to no problems with enemy AI. The level design throughout the entire game is fantastic, as I was surprised with both being able to freely move around in large spaces while also being pointed in the right direction. The level design, more importantly, takes full advantage of Titanfall's movement system. You will fail in this game if you're not constantly moving, and the campaign's level designs gives you perfect, fun opportunities to bounce around levels, taking out enemies in unique ways. The Titan gameplay is also a lot of fun, if just a tad more formulaic than pilot gameplay. From mowing down hundreds of infantry to multiple mechs just as strong as you are, fighting as a Titan is a satisfying way to spend most of your time in the campaign, especially considering that you could change your Titan's classes on the fly. The game is also not afraid to try things that are unconventional in the realm of typical first-person shooters. First of all, around a quarter of the gameplay consists of platforming, and I'm happy to say that Titanfall 2's platforming segments are some of the best to be found in any FPS game this side of Mirror's Edge. By the end of the game, you're tasked with bouncing between multiple walls and whizzing around the map like a complete master. There are also a few levels that throw in interesting mechanics that, while they don't make much sense narratively, are a ton of fun to actually play, such as this device that lets you bounce between two different timelines. And then there are Titan boss battles against the most over-the-top villains you could possibly imagine. While some of these fights tend to feel the same, it was a great way to change up the pace and make for some enjoyably tense moments. Overall, while the campaign is fairly short and unapologetically cheesy, it was an enjoyable adventure that, above everything else, was just a ton of fun to play. And by the way, if you're even remotely good at video games, I highly recommend playing this game on hard difficulty at the very least. Just saying. But the real reason you should play Titanfall 2 is for its addictive, fast-paced multiplayer. The frantic gameplay of Titanfall is even more intense in the multiplayer, and it's more fun than the majority of the Call of Duty games that have come out in recent memory. I feel as if the time it takes to kill or be killed is great in this game, as you don't die instantly and you don't survive forever. I think it's perfect. The 9 maps are mostly filled with excellent level design and wonderful opportunities for unique movement, although there are a few bad apples that don't play nearly as well as other maps. Fan favorite modes such as Attrition are back, as well as Hardpoint, which is essentially domination, and as much as I love Hardpoint, I do think the games could have benefited from longer match times, as the majority of games just ended way too soon. There's also a new game mode called Bounty Hunt, where two teams compete against each other to earn as much money as possible by killing NPCs, while simultaneously stopping the other team from earning money. And while this game mode was fun for a short while, I still found myself coming back to old favorites like Attrition and Hardpoint. The customization you have over your pilot and your Titan is balanced almost perfectly, by giving you just enough options to play the way you like, with multiple weapons, attachments, skills, and equipment, without being unnecessarily complicated like most Call of Duty games. The leveling system is also well thought out, as I was always leveling up either my character, weapons, or Titans, which means I was always advancing and I felt a need to continue playing the game. My biggest problem with Titanfall 2's multiplayer is in its longevity. As amazingly fun as the gameplay is, I feel little desire to come back long after the game's release. I never felt proud or accomplished when I won a match, and never felt disappointed or sad when I lost one. Everything sort of feels meaningless. I feel as this is a game to play just for fun and never to take seriously. And the time the game was released doesn't help at all. But with the promise of absolutely free DLC, time will tell whether or not Titanfall 2 can hold its own and keep me coming back. As a full package, Titanfall 2 is mechanically a superbly polished shooter with some of the most satisfying traversal and gunplay I've experienced in a first-person shooter in a long time. The short campaign is simple, dumb fun. While it's nothing special, it's paced extremely well and can be pleasantly occupied during the short running time. Titanfall 2's multiplayer is better than the first game by expanding upon the near-perfect addictive traversal system as a pilot and made the act of controlling a Titan more strategic and gratifying. This is a fantastic feeling shooter, but in both single-player and multiplayer, I feel as if I have little reason to return to this polished gem months after release. But because the game boasts free DLC and constant updates, I'm looking forward to Titanfall's future. Now, when it comes to whether or not you should buy this game, I believe the answer is simple. If you personally think that Titanfall 2 looks like a lot of fun, then you would be correct. Titanfall 2 does exactly what it appears to be. It is a futuristic, epic, satisfying first-person shooter. Titanfall 2 receives an 8.5 out of 10. So that was what I thought of Titanfall 2, but more importantly, I want to know what you think of it. If you play this game already, comment below and let me know what you thought of it. And if you have any questions about the game I didn't answer in the video, then comment below and I'll answer your questions for you. For more video game reviews, top 10s, and anything having to do with bathrooms, then subscribe to Bathroom Gamers. Thank you for watching, and stay fresh.